As a quick introduction, Greg is a research and development executive and innovator with extensive product development, project management, and strategy experience. He's known for his strong expertise in food and beverage formula and process development, as well as project management and commercialization to deliver innovation and drive growth. Greg has worked for and with many Fortune 100 companies, including Kraft Foods, Starbucks, McDonald's, and Nature's Bounty, as well as early-stage startups. He is also an entrepreneur, having ideated, patented, and successfully commercialized a repositionable magnetic frame hanging system called Gallery Magic. He achieved nationwide distribution in Ace Hardware and a 5-star rating on Amazon and on the Grommet. Thank you again for joining us, Greg. We're thrilled to have you here and we appreciate the support during these challenging times. I'll turn it over to you to get started, and thanks once again.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks to the entire Branchfood team. It's a real privilege to be here with you guys today and sharing some insights on this. And I really do look forward to having like a conversation on this because, you know, it's a fairly complex topic, but I think that we can all learn from each other, and hopefully everybody walks away from today's presentation with some new ideas and some new approaches that they can leverage. So thanks for the introduction. And who is Greg? You know, background as with 24 years with Kraft Foods and working with some of their marquee brands there, including Philadelphia cream cheese, Capri Sun, Post cereals, as well as Tassimo, which if you're not familiar with Tassimo here in the US, I'll forgive you because you know, Tassimo was a global effort by Kraft Foods, very successful in England and Germany and France and South Korea, but we did not do particularly well here in the US. But it was an on-demand beverage system that competed with Keurig. And so some of the partner brands that I worked with as part of getting beverages onto the platform of Tassimo included Peet's, Tim Hortons, Tetley, Starbucks, and we had a great time with that. It was very interesting working with those different companies, very different cultures across them, and you know, that was a very fun time in my life. I did also work at Nature's Bounty Company, where I stood up a project management team and also re-implemented a stage gate process to help them prioritize the resources against the best innovations in their portfolio. And as Carol mentioned, I also was am an entrepreneur. I commercialized Gallery Magic, which was a magnetic frame hanging system, and it was a great way to you know, learn about being an entrepreneur. It was ultimately not financially successful for me, but I have absolutely no regrets. It was a lot of fun. Leverage my resources, as I'm sure you guys are doing in these challenging times, to create something and put it out there and make a go of it. So into the topic. I've heard that venture capital and private equity firms still have money to invest and deals are still getting closed. But I think everybody would agree that there's definitely going to be, you know, more due diligence. There's going to be more caution around it. Some companies that in the past, maybe they would have gotten a flyer and an investment. Those companies may not get that investment today, or it may take them longer to get that investment. So the question is, how can you separate yourself from the pack, have a competitive advantage, and leverage your expertise to get that funding? There's a great quote that I love from Irene Rosenfeld, former CEO of Kraft Foods Global. If you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. And your competitive advantage could be anything. It doesn't have to be everything, but you have to have something that you can hang your hat on, something you can point to that's different from your competitors. And competitors can be in the context of in the marketplace, trying to get onto the shelf where there's limited shelf space. Your competitors could be in the context of getting funding, which is what we're talking about here primarily today. So could your competitive advantage be using R&D or other aspects of your company for that competitive advantage? Ultimately, ask yourself, what is your competitive advantage for getting that funding? I think everybody's aware of this, but I just want to level set and make sure that everybody's on the same level playing field and level knowledge of due diligence. And anytime that a funding effort is put forward by VC or private equity, they're going to do due diligence on your company. And they're going to look at evaluating you as an investment opportunity based on your management team, the market that you're competing in, the product or service that you're providing, and the business model, and many other things. My observation is that many food and beverage entrepreneurs come from non-technical backgrounds. In other words, non-R&D or non-scientific backgrounds. And that's great, because I think that's where a lot of creativity comes in, a lot of ideas that a science person may not come up with. And that creates a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to innovate. However, as a result of being a non-technical entrepreneur, sometimes the R&D basis of the startup is often not developed well enough in the early stages. And that can create problems during that early stage, as well as manifest later on in the progress of your company toward commercialization and financial success as you become a late stage entrepreneur, where you can't scale. So something that worked either in an incubator or an accelerator setting, suddenly you're at full manufacturing for maybe regional, perhaps even national distribution, and you're not able to scale those formulas, those ingredients, those distribution networks. So having that basis of your R&D or any other element of your company in place in a solid way, it doesn't have to be extensive, but at least well thought out and considered, that will help you in scaling, as well as in those due diligence conversations where you can talk about the fundamentals of your product in terms of its food safety, the manufacturing scalability with high quality, how you're going to be profitable at scale, not just at in the early stages. And then also the consumer acceptance. Do you understand your consumer, the usage occasions, what they like, what they don't like about your product? Being able to have those conversations with either networking conversations or with potential investors, that'll set you apart. So here's a quote from a partner at Skewed Ventures. I asked him about how do they do due diligence on the companies that they're looking to invest in. And the answer that he gave me, given that I'm an R&D guy, it was a little surprising. His answer was, when we perform due diligence on a startup company, we simply assume that they have no R&D sophistication whatsoever. And again, that was a little surprising for me, because I love R&D. I love the technical aspects and making sure that the details are considered at the right stage of the development. And to have somebody say that they just simply assume that there is no sophistication there, that was surprising. But it points to a great insight and a great opportunity, I think, for all entrepreneurs to, again, consider that, get pieces of the puzzle in place so that you can at least talk about them. Maybe you haven't solved everything, but you're at least aware of what's coming down the road at you, so that you can have those intelligent conversations. So your competitive advantage: develop the technical foundation and the consumer insight fundamentals for your company. Talk about this during networking and funding conversations, and practice that conversation, because the first time you talk about it, it's going to be a little wonky. You're not going to be fluid with that. You're not necessarily going to project confidence and you've mastered the information. So practice that conversation with everybody that you network with, so that when you're ready for that funding conversation, it's a well-rehearsed, well-honed conversation, and you drive home the points that you really want to get across. And ultimately, doing this will give you a competitive advantage and accelerate your innovation and business success by addressing near-term problems that you have right now, as well as setting you up for mitigating or preventing future problems before they even get here. Some areas that you can develop. There are basic fundamental things like understanding purchase intent. So a lot of times you'll take your product to a friend or a family member, and they'll give you feedback and they'll say, I love this. But is that group of people, even if you do sampling in a store, which is particularly challenging these days, is that feedback quantifiable, or is it more qualitative? By having some purchase intent understanding via some basic online surveys, that will help you a lot. Doing sensory profiling and consumer acceptance to optimize the profile of your product, texture, flavor, or other organoleptic aspects. Understanding and being able to talk about having done this and having quantified will help you a lot. Do you have the certifications in place that you want? You don't need to have every certification, but in today's marketplace, certifications do matter. They do get attention from consumers. Now, my warning on this is that certifications, I think, are becoming a bit commoditized. I think that everybody has some certification, and so to a consumer, it starts to look like just a wash of certifications on the label. So look for the certifications that are going to be important to your consumer in your marketplace and pursue those. Don't try to get every certification under the sun because it just looks like, you know, a bunch of stuff on the label. And also packaging material and the design of your packaging material. Have they been optimized for delivery of your product? Both obviously in a food safe sort of way, but also for shelf life. Are you protecting the product with its primary package to get it through your declared shelf life for flavor, as well as I said, food safety aspects? Then there's some more advanced areas that you can explore as you become, you know, mid to late stage entrepreneur. You know, are you optimized with your formula for scale? Is your supply chain optimized for scale? So, you know, both the ingredient purchases as well as the manufacturing size. Coming out of an incubator, you know, you may be at a small scale co-manufacturer. Can that co-manufacturer get you to a regional or national distribution? Thinking about that and having those problems identified and potential solutions thought about early on will help you. Everybody is going to be cost optimizing their product because, you know, when you're either out of your kitchen or perhaps in an incubator, you're buying the ingredients potentially at Costco or some other club store to optimize your costs. As you grow and you get into co-manufacturers, co-packers, your supply chain changes very dramatically. And you need to be able to either bundle your ingredient purchases with those of your co-manufacturer or find efficient ways to purchase them yourself. And then there's the area of intellectual property. Have you considered potential patents? Should you pursue patenting, or are keeping your trade secrets as a secret a better way of protecting your intellectual property? And there's a whole discussion on that about what's the best way to protect your IP. Patents are not always the best way. Here is a truism. Periods of great and extreme change provide a terrific time to innovate. We are clearly in a period of extreme change. The consumer and marketplace have absolutely changed forever. It's not going to go back to the way it was. Will it be something, you know, close to the old normal? Maybe, but I think we can all agree that working from home or working remotely is definitely here to stay. You know, I've read multiple articles in the New York Times and other places where office buildings and companies that occupy those office buildings are not going back. They're saying right now to their workers, you know, don't plan on coming back anytime soon. And even I think it was Twitter said, anybody who can work from home, you have our permission to forever work from home. So those folks are not going to go back. What does that create in terms of opportunities to innovate? In the office, when people would go there, they would take portable snacks like protein bars, either in their briefcase or their purse, so they'd have those to snack on during the day and perhaps replace a meal. What do they want for convenient food at home? And also, what replaces those restaurant meals? Restaurants eventually will start to open up, but can they pack in the same number of diners as they did before? Are the prices going to be higher because they were operating on razor thin margins before? How are they going to service those customers that want to come in, keep them safe, and serve them a meal that is cost effective? I think that there's going to be an opportunity to work in that area and innovate. And also, how do we maintain social distance while sharing meals? Sharing food is such a fundamental element of almost every culture on the planet. How are we going to do that going forward in a social, distant, safe way? And immune boosting foods. Is that going to be a flash in the pan, or is that going to be the next trend that takes us through the next several years? I think these are the questions that as entrepreneurs, ask yourself and then figure out how you're going to innovate against those opportunities. So ultimately, to help you do some of this stuff, you're probably not at a stage of your company where you can hire an R&D team, build out, a quality person and a process engineer and a food scientist. You're probably not at that stage, but you could certainly hire a consultant to help you with elements of it. so that you can, again, you don't need to solve every problem, but start working on it one step at a time and prepare yourself for those networking and funding conversations. You can find a consultant either through your network of friends and colleagues, including the Branchfood team. You may also leverage university professors who have some deep expertise if you need that for your particular formula or your particular product that you have. There are also consultant brokerage firms out there that provide, soup to nuts services. And there's also independent consultants as a resource, like myself. The big question, of course, then is how do you find a good consultant? And here are some simple questions you can ask yourself and steps you can take. First of is to identify what you need most. So as I said before, you can't do everything. You don't want to boil the ocean, but what is the thing that you think is most important? If you're not sure what the most important thing that you need to address is, talk with your network of food entrepreneurs and exchange information. Learn where they're strong and maybe you have an opportunity to improve. And you can also consider to hire a consultant for a few hours of dialogue. Walk them through your company, your product, and they can give you some insights as to where they think that the opportunities are. It's important, I think, also to leverage and find a consultant that matches your needs as well as your style. Everybody has a different style. Some people very direct, some people, a bit more circumspect. But having somebody who matches your personal style, the style of your company, will make that conversation and that collaboration so much easier. I'd also recommend that you talk with several people to get perspective. You can engage consultants for a small specific deliverable to test drive the relationship. And you can do that with 2 or 3 different consultants to see who has the knowledge that you need and also has that good personality fit for your needs. Then after you've done that, how do you leverage that for your investment? As I talked about earlier, you really want to practice this conversation with your network of friends and entrepreneurs, as well as so that you're ready for that conversation with the potential funding company. You can talk about how you've established your company's credibility by doing XYZ, whatever that is. You can also talk about that you have hired a consultant as an expert to provide guidance on whatever topic that you're pursuing. And talk about how you've hired either that university professor, how you have leveraged an incubator or accelerator, how you've hired a consultant to help you on some specific attribute. And very specifically, talk about the problem that you've solved. Don't just say, we've brought somebody in. Talk about how they have brought something to the party, how they've helped you solve some problem, and that'll really help increase the confidence in the person you're speaking to about the credibility of what you've done. And you can also talk about that we've invested in this effort and we're prepared for the future. I think that's something that venture capital, PE, angel investors, they're really going to want to know going forward is, what have you done to prepare for the future? If you can talk about that and leverage those words of how you, again, quote, prepared for the future, that is going to get people's attention more than it may have in the past. So with that, questions?
Thank you, Greg, for the awesome presentation. That is very useful and insightful. If anyone has a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it directly to Greg and he will answer it. Otherwise, you can send us your questions via chat and we can ask them on your behalf.
Hey, Greg, it's Kevin Devine.
Yeah, Kevin, how you doing?
Good. Great presentation. Quick question. I know you mentioned people being more cautious with their money in these days. Can you give your perspective as to what one should expect to pay a consultant or conversely, how a consultant comes up with their costs? That might
be so that's a great question. And ultimately as entrepreneurs, we're all kind of trying to do this as efficiently as possible. But there's a couple different ways. There's going to be an hourly rate that a consultant could charge, and there could also be based on a project. So if you can identify a specific deliverable that the consultant is expected to do, they may be willing to quote you the completion of that based on just a project basis. If you talk about it on an hourly basis, there's going to be a wide range there as well. It could be anything from $125, $150 up to $200, perhaps even more, particularly if you get into university professor that has a deep expertise and you really need some very specific subsection of science aspects, their cost may be higher. So, but in the general, I would say $125 to $200 is a pretty normal range for independent consultants. May be a little bit higher for brokerage firms because they need to tack on their margin on top of the consultants.
Great, thanks.
Do we have another question from the audience?
Sure, I have a question. So Greg, first, great presentation. You just mentioned, independent consultants as well as you said brokerage firms. So can you help me understand what are the benefits or pros and cons of an independent consultant versus a consulting group where there are large development firms?
Yeah, so I'll start with the large development firm where they can really because they have lots of people in their organization, and they can share that work across them. That's going to be, like sort of one-stop shopping. Now that's going to come with higher price because they have higher overhead and there's more marketing dollars that they have to spend to get out there. And so that's going to typically come with a higher price. But if you're looking for something just like one-stop shopping and you want to make your time efficiency as efficient as possible, that may be the right solution for you. Sort of a middle of the road is going to be a small firm where they're collaborating with other consultants. Maybe they have 2 or 3 or 4 consultants, and between those 2 or 3 or 4 consultants, they have all the expertise that they need for R&D or marketing or finance, whatever you're hiring them for in terms of consulting know-how. And that's maybe like the most efficient to get that broad spectrum capabilities as well as efficient on cost. Then the next one down from there is just an independent consultant where they have their skills and their expertise, but they may not know or have the expertise for other elements. So if like myself, I am not a regulatory expert, I am not a quality expert. If I was to be hired as an independent consultant, I would have to reach out to somebody else in that area. But because I have a network of consultants as part of Greg Wise and Associates Consulting, I know and have those resources at my fingertips to bring into the project so that it's seamless for you as the entrepreneur hiring me, and it happens behind the background to get all the aspects of the project completed.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Jess. Thank you for taking my question. Actually, I have 2 questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So in the very early stages of looking to bring a product to market, I'm actually going to be working through a pre-seed accelerator starting in June, so I'll have a lot of great support, but I'm just trying to get some initial research under my belt. And so in the process of looking for a food scientist in order just to start to ask some general questions and find out the scope of the work and what something like this might cost and the time and just all the initial questions that I'm having.
Yeah.
I'm really literally just like Googling for food scientists, and I'm wondering, I haven't seemed to come across a directory of maybe where everyone's listed and maybe sort of what specialty they are. Maybe they're dessert people or they're beverage people. So if there is a directory out there, could you inform me as to what that is?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm not knowledgeable of a directory that captures that. I think it's a great opportunity, but I'm not aware of there being a directory out there where everybody is like kind of put their information in. So certainly offline, I can help you if you want. I can connect you, depending on your product, to some people that have really strong food science backgrounds in a particular area. I'd be glad to do what I can to assist you.
Okay, great. And then, yeah, because my product's kind of offbeat.
Okay.
My second question is, since I have been speaking with some of them, God, they're an odd group. They're an odd bunch of people, food scientists for sure. I came across somebody who's completely independent versus I've spoke to people that are in a company, right? So there may be 2 or 3 or 4 of them all working in a big company. And I was wondering the pros and cons behind finding somebody who is independent. So in other words, he's going to be taking what I'm giving him to a lab and working sort of as an independent consultant, and then I guess paying a fee. It's sort of like, I guess, how doctors go to hospitals and have, rights to work at a hospital, that he has that ability to go into a laboratory, or I don't even know, a contained area, and work on the product. Are there any pros and cons to hiring somebody who is independent versus somebody who's in a company?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the answer that I gave to the previous question, where a purely and one-person shop independent consultant, they're going to have a certain amount of resources, both just their own personal knowledge and expertise, as well as connections to labs and other facilities. So I think that depending on your product, that may be fine if you can find that person who is exactly what you need. Perhaps a better, easier, less risky approach is to work with somebody that does have a network of people that they're working with. It could be 2, 3, 4 consultants together in a group. That helps you cover where, that person's information and knowledge gaps exist. And the other place that you can go, depending on again, the uniqueness of your product, sometimes co-manufacturers will develop the product. They'll charge you a tolling fee based on the manufacturing quantities later on after you commercialize. That's one way to do it. And there are also firms out there like Matson and other firms out there that for a fee will develop your product for you. So it's less about hiring a consultant and more about hiring a company to develop your product. But again, I would caution you with any of those scenarios, make sure that you understand what the consumer insight is, what you're targeting for this product, so that you make sure that whoever is developing the product for you is targeting and achieving the innovation insight that you've identified.
Terrific. Great advice. I'll go ahead and send you an email. I'd like to speak with you further. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
We did receive a question, Greg, via chat. One of the participants is asking if you can offer some tips on how to find angels and investors.
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise in finding angels and investors. I'm just suggesting that as you're having conversations with those folks, be ready with a really strong, compelling conversation that sets you apart from the crowd. I don't have any personal resources. Perhaps somebody from the Branchfood team has some resources that they could share.
Yeah, whoever asked this question, you can head over to branchventuregroup.com, which is a capital network of angel investors if you're interested. And you can also just research other local, if you're located in Boston, you can research other local capital networks as well. I would just Google angel investors Boston or whichever city you're based at. Okay, we're almost, we're at 1:30. So thank you so much, Greg, for this useful presentation.
My pleasure.
If you would like to connect with Greg, feel free to send him an email at gwisemanconsulting@gmail.com, or if you'd like, send us an email at info@branchfood.com, and we'll put you in touch with Greg. Thank you so much for the presentation and for the insights. It's really helpful and useful, especially during these times. Thank you all for joining this Serving Up Support session. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time with the Boston Public Market Association, where Cheryl Cronin and Carrie DeWitt will share how the Boston Public Market has been supporting small New England startups and companies throughout the COVID-19 crisis, and how they plan on doing so once restrictions are eased and lifted. Please join us and spread the word. As a reminder, you can register and rewatch all of the Serving Up Support sessions on branchfood.com/servingupsupport. All of the sessions are recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel, so head over there to rewatch them, and please don't forget to subscribe. For any feedback, please reach us at info@branchfood.com. And thank you all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a good one. Thanks again, Greg.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.